Well, on page 3, Nietzsche asks what I consider to be a very key question for his theme here. I think I've quoted it before, and that is when he asks, is language the adequate expression of all realities? It's a rhetorical question on his part. Clearly, it's not. Why is it so important that language is not adequate to express reality? Well, language is our tool for representing reality. It's our only tool for representing reality. It's certainly our only tool for communicating with each other about reality, and it's certainly the indispensable basis for any sort of rational mental activity is to use and employ language. Uh, why is that? Well, it's because language is what allows us to form concepts, and concepts, the formation of concepts, and concepts. Let's give examples. General ideas like book or tree; those are concepts. Maybe more abstract concepts are things like democracy or knowledge or human being or person. These are all concepts that are formulated or expressed through language, let's say. And although they may be more or less abstract in the way that they think of them, I think what Nietzsche is saying is they're all abstract. That is, how do we form concepts? That I think that the most important idea that Nietzsche has about concept formation, and I'm looking here on the second paragraph, page 4. He says, in particular, let us further consider the formation of concepts. Concepts are all general, always general. That is, the individual experience, which he's already called into question, our experience of individual things in the world has been reduced to the so-called nerve stimulus. So described what I tried to describe last time in terms of physiological processes that go on to create sensations. It's already been undermined, but even if we think about our experience of the world in common sense terms, our experience of things in the world are always unique individual things that we meet with at a certain time in our experience. It's very, very difficult to capture those unique individual ephemeral experiences in language, because language has a tendency always to generalize. That is, if we say, well, what did you eat today? And I say a sandwich, I'm using a general concept. That is, a general concept that's meant to apply to an infinite number of unique individual things, the whole family of things that we call sandwiches. It'd be very difficult for me to capture in language the unique individual sandwich that I ate. I use language as a shorthand for describing my experiences, but my language is already an abstraction. When I use the word a concept sandwich, I'm pretty far from that individual experience that I had. I'm using a general formal concept. So he says, in particular, let us further consider the formation of concepts. Every word instantly becomes a concept, precisely insofar as it is not supposed to serve as a reminder of the unique and entirely individual original experience to which it owes its origin. But rather, a word becomes a concept insofar as it simultaneously has to fit countless more or less similar cases, which means, purely and simply, cases which are never equal, and thus altogether unequal. Every concept arises from the equation of unequal things. We have two individual things, both of which we would call a sandwich, but they have some similarity, we would suppose. And this gets very deep into philosophy here in terms of how we actually form concepts, recognize similarities, and things like that. But those two sandwiches, those two individual things, are infinitely different from each other in their particulars, yet I call them by the same name. Every concept arises from the equation of unequal things. That is, the making equal, the forcing in thought to be equal of things which in reality are not equal to each other. Just as it is certain that one leaf is never totally the same as another, so it is certain that the concept leaf is formed by arbitrarily discarding these individual differences and by forgetting the distinguishing aspects. So, what is Nietzsche saying here? He's already said that on our experience of things in the world, we're already pretty far from those things because we can only experience them indirectly, one might say, if we experience them at all, through our internal subjective experiences, sensation. That's one remove. We think about how we must express our so-called knowledge in language, and how the process of abstraction and the making equal of unequal things is built into concept formation, which is essential to language. Then we have a further remove from what we would call reality. First, because of sensation, the process of sensation itself, and then a further remove because of the process of turning things into concepts so that we can speak of that language. So we're getting further and further from what we would at least naively call reality. That is, the human being as a cognitive, knowing creature is actually pretty far removed from the things that he or she thinks that they know. This is, I think, why the concept of metaphor is so important and so often repeated in this essay. Metaphor is when we try to express one thing by means of another. We try to express an idea or a concept by means of a picture, some sort of illustration of some sort. Um, that our knowledge of the world is really not direct knowledge. Our knowledge of the world is a host of metaphors. He says on page 5 in the second paragraph, what then is truth? Again, a movable host of metaphors, metonymies, and anthropomorphisms. In short, a sum of human relations which have been poetically and rhetorically intensified, transferred, and embellished, and which, after long usage, seem to a people to be fixed, canonical, and binding. Metaphor is the indirect expression of something through a picture. Metonymies, the way that we refer to things by referring to things that we think are associated with them. Anthropomorphisms, where we shape the world, literally shape it in the form of a human being to better understand it. What is truth? A sum of human relations. That is, we normally think of truth, if we can ever get it, as having an accurate representation of the way the world really is. That is, I would say our fundamental notion of truth is having an accurate description, picture, or representation of reality as it is, independent of us. That is, I know that something is true if my idea, my description, in some sense or another, my representation actually matches up with the way the world really is in some aspect. Nietzsche is rejecting all that. Nietzsche is saying that what we call truth is a sum of human relations. That is, we never actually transcend the human in truth. We never actually accurately represent the world. We wouldn't even know what that means to accurately represent the world. The world is really kind of mystery, what it is in itself. I don't know the world in itself. All I know are my ideas, my pictures, my words, my human things. What he seems to be saying is that we should just get over the whole Kantian idea of progress and knowledge. It doesn't mean anything. The whole idea of progress and knowledge would mean that in different areas of knowledge, whether it be scientific knowledge, moral knowledge, political knowledge, issues like justice and things like that, the whole Kantian idea is that there is a way the world is, I guess, although Kant himself and his other philosophy undermined this. But the supposition in what is enlightenment seems to be that there is something like truth, and we can get closer to it. Nietzsche seems to be saying that's ridiculous. We're not going to get closer to anything. If we know anything about the world, it's because we recognize what we put into it. That's the whole idea of anthropomorphism. We shape the world. We shape our experience in different ways. And if we are able to understand the world, it's because we've shaped the world in a certain way already. And in fact, that's one of the things in the background here about Kant's other philosophy, the Critique of Pure Reason, his big work on the theory of knowledge, where he suggested something of the same thing, that the only way that we can make sense of the world is by shaping it, sort of pre-shaping it, putting our experience in such a form that our experience is comprehensible to us. But knowledge then is at least as much a matter of us shaping the world as us truly representing the world. Nietzsche seems to be going totally towards knowledge is just us recognizing what we ourselves have already put into the world. He says on page 6, man builds with the far more delicate conceptual material which he first has to manufacture from himself. That is, these concepts that we derive, produce in language are used to comprehend the world. In this he is greatly to be admired, but not on account of his drive for truth or for pure knowledge of things. When someone hides something behind a bush and looks for it again in the same place and finds it there as well, there is not much to praise in such seeking and finding. Yet this is how matters stand regarding seeking and finding truth within the realm of reason. As if we hide something behind a bush and then find it there. Well, I mean, the game is rigged, right? If I make up the definition of a mammal and then after inspecting a camel declare, look, a mammal, I have indeed brought a truth to light in this way, but it is a truth of limited value. That is to say, it is a thoroughly anthropomorphic truth. That is, if it's a truth, it's only a truth with reference to us. If it's truth, it's only because we shaped the world in our experience to make it true, which contains not a single point which would be, quote, true in itself, or really and universally valid apart from man. This shaping of the world, this rigging of the game in terms of creating concepts, and shaping our experience, and finding the things and experience we put there, I think is a pretty deep part of human nature for Nietzsche. He says, for instance, at the bottom of page 9, he says, the drive toward the formation of metaphors is the fundamental human drive. The formation of metaphors, the way that we create and misrepresent creatively in metaphor and other forms of poetic speech. That's the real human drive. And this would be a really nice contrast with what Kant says in What is Enlightenment about the original destiny of mankind and the so-called crime against human nature if we were to cut off free inquiry into truth. There, it seemed like if there's anything that is the fundamental human drive for a human being, it is the drive to know, to get truth. Whereas Nietzsche is saying that the fundamental human drive is towards the formation of metaphors, which one might say is our creative, anthropomorphic misrepresentation, shaping of experience to suit our needs and whims and interests. The drive toward the formation of metaphors is the fundamental human drive, which one cannot for a single instant dispense with in thought, for one would thereby dispense with man himself. That is, if we were to throw away all our metaphors, throw away all of the things in our experience that we contribute in terms of finding truth, take all that away and try to see what's left and hoping to find truth there, what we would find would be nothing, it would be emptiness. That is, the anthropomorphic, world-shaping human drive to creatively misrepresent the world is so fundamental that there is really nothing else. So there is no truth in the way that we normally imagine. There is no knowledge in the way that we normally imagine it. And you know what? So what? We don't want that anyway. At the end of this essay, very interesting, he makes a contrast between the rational person who sticks with concepts and the myth-making, artistic person who's more interested in poetry and doesn't care for truth. He opposes these two figures and talks about, the one is in the prison of concepts, the other as the freedom of intuition to create. And he seems to be suggesting that the latter person is the better expression of human beings, the one who doesn't care about truth, the only one who wants to be happy, to make something beautiful and doesn't care if it's true. And again, I think a very nice contrast with what Kant was getting at.